the battlegrounds, which are characterized by the presence of a lot of canyon systems. We are talking about a depth range that is down to 800 meters of. Okay. Obviously, I don't have time sufficient to enter in the details of the mass balance model, but the standard is the EcoPath with EcoSim. The main is that we are looking at the functional group as a single species or grouping of species, which are trophic similarity. And we are providing results from 3 different snapshots that we find alongside the time series that we are studied as initial condition towards fixed changes. We investigate a total of around 300 species of the demersal assemblage, which are sampled in the Northern Ionian, which is the geographical sub-area 19 according to GFCM FAO, and by means around 70 experimental holes by year since 1995 until 2015. We collect information about life history trace, biomass species, parameter of production and consumption, quantitative diets in terms of percentage of weight, and also information about landing and fishing data. Our trophic web is constituted by 58 functional groups. 37 of that are demersal, coming from demersal assemblage, and among them, 5 refers to chondroichthyans. 37 of that are namely, we have 6 species in shelf sharks ray benthic feeders, 4 species in shelf black sharks and ray benthic pelagic feeders, 6 species in bathyal sharks and ray benthic feeders, and 3 species in bathyal shark benthic pelagic feeders. We decide to put Galeus melastomus as a single species because of its importance. That's just to show you what kind of results we have investigated, but this trophic web was analyzed just in the perspective of what happens to the role of the chondroichthyans. We use some index, in this case the omnivory index, which is a sort of proxies that allow you to have some information about if a consumer is a specialized or is a multi-trophic level consumer. Or we use the Caisson index, which is an index that summarizes the positive or negative impacts as a sort of bottom-up and top trophic web, and the mixed trophic impact, which is another kind of elements that estimate direct and indirect impacts between 2 different functional groups. And we adopt this strategy also when we consider the fishing exploitation like a sort of consumer that is acting on the trophic web. Also, we have as other fishing indicators, but among that, more even ROF, the exploitation rate. Coming rapidly to the results, we confirm that all these functional groups refers to top predators, and the bathyal sharks bentopelagic feeders resulted more generalist in terms of the diet and their involvement in the other rest of the trophic web. Considering the Caisson group ranking alongside the 3 snapshots time, we observed that the bathyal sharks benthic pelagic feeders was the most important Caisson group, and look at the red point, which refers to the smallest one, which refers to the Galeus melastomus, that during these 3 different time periods increased its role, the significance of its role. But the bathyal sharks bentopelagic feeder remain always quite important. what happens that we look at the Gallus melastomus, the role of Gallus melastomus alongside the overall caseon index ranking is increasing, and after a flexion in the middle of the time, the Bathyal sharks bentopelagic feeders remain at the very high level of the trophic web. What happens is also that this functional group provide the top-down control role also in an increasing list of species. So it means that are eating more species. What about the exploitation rate? These pictures show that during the time, the exploitation condition of Gallus melastomus seems to reduce. And what happens to the shelf sharks and ray benthic feeder is a slowdown during the 3-time period. What happens to the shelf sharks and ray benthic feeder these are results from the mixed trophic impact, which show that the negative mixed trophic of troll on the shelf sharks and ray benthic feeder, Bathyal sharks, bentipelagic feeders, and Gallus melastomus decrease along the time series, whilst the long line show the highest negative impact on the Bathyal sharks and ray benthic feeder. So it's a very clear evidence of its role in its impact. So coming very rapidly to discussion, I show that we confirmed with our analysis that the trophic level estimated by the model confirmed the role of apex predators for sharks and ray groups within the The Bathyal sharks bentopelagic feeders result an important keystone group, playing a top-down control on other consumers, especially on the bentopelagic species, which it's important exchange energy from surface to deeper zone. And the changes in keystone's importance of group could be due to environmental changes that we are observing in the Mediterranean Sea as a consequence of the North Adriatic Ionian bimodal oscillation system, with changes from anticyclonic to cyclonic gyre. This is very important. We verify this condition in the other species in the trophic. Due to the slight decrease in a nominal fishing effort in terms of number of vessels, which is occurred lastly in the JSA 19. Moreover, the low exploitation rate on sharks and ray groups could be due to a refuge effect played by the canyon present in the area. So the future is moving towards the application of the EcoSim, so the EcoPact and the EcoSim simulation model, and what we are doing actually with an important project, which is the Fair Sea project, and this is a special contribution to Emilio Speroni.
Thank you, Roberto, for the synthesis of this. Any questions, comments? Thank you, Roberto, for the synthesis of this. No questions, no comments? Okay, I've got one for you. Investigate any changes in distribution and availability of prey of different sharks species? It's complicated, I know.
Thank you very much, Fulvio, for this important question. Yes, we did. I don't have time to to show you. If someone is interested in having some information, detailed information. Yes, we did. We are investigating actually all the trophic web in the northern Ionian Sea, which is divided by in two different dominium, the Calabrian ones and the Apulian ones, and with the differences alongside the both sides of the northern Ionian Sea, and difference in the change in the trophic web. But since the topic is, but yes, definitely yes.
Okay, thank you, Roberto. No more questions, comments. Okay,
thank you very much.
We go through the next presentation. Aviad Shaining and colleagues on Shark Research Hub for Dusky Shark, Carcharinus obscurus, and sandbar shark, Carcharinus plumbeus in the easternmost Mediterranean Sea. On Shark Research Hub for Dusky Shark, Carcharinus obscurus, and sandbar shark, Carcharinus plumbeus in the easternmost Mediterranean Sea.
Thank you all for coming this morning. I'm sure it was a challenge. So what I'm going to tell you this morning is about our shark research in the Morris Kahn Marine Research Station at the University of Haifa. It has started 4 years ago. Since then, many researchers, as you can see on the list of writers, have been involved in it. Well, it started 4 years ago. Since then, many researchers, as you can see on the list of writers, have been involved in it. Okay, as you can see, many researchers have been involved in it, and you've heard yesterday Tal's talk about our blood analysis. Later on today, Adi Barash will give a talk about our 3 years summing up our tagging research, which I'll tell you a little bit about later. And Eyal Bigal, who is in charge of our new technologies, and will give a talk about a new approach for apex predators surveying methods. I would like to thank our donors, our team, the volunteers, which are doing amazing work. So where are we situated? So as you know, we are here in Rende, and Israel is in the easternmost part of the Mediterranean Sea. We have 200 kilometers of coastline, that's it. Gaza and Egypt are south of us, Lebanon and Syria are to the north. This shark long-term ecological research, and the emphasis on long-term, is part of the Morris Kahn Marine Research Station, and what we do there is we collect different data layers on the environment, on the marine environment, starting from the chemistry of the water through the bacterial community of the soft sediment. We collect fish and invertebrates in the rocky reefs, and also we do pathogens of wild animals. And the last is the apex predators, which I'm in charge of. There is a paradox in the Eastern Mediterranean. It is the apex predators, which oligotrophic body of waters in the world, maybe the most one, and but still we see large aggregation of apex predators, such as coastal dolphins, bluefin tuna, swordfish, and coastal and offshore sharks and rays. We have two main aggregations of two species of coastal sharks. The first one is the sandbar, Carcharinus plumbeus, which is listed by the IUCN in the Mediterranean as endangered. And aggregation of dusky shark, Carcharinus obscurus, which is listed by the IUCN in the Mediterranean as data deficient. Those large aggregation might be due to the fact that in Israel, sharks and rays are protected under the law of wildlife animal, which means that they are not fished in Israel, and you're not allowed to trade with them. Adding to the fact that they are not kosher to eat, so this obviously helps them too. So this is what we see in Israel, and I have a few footage that you can see here. This is under the offshore fish cages of Ashdod, which is in the south part of Israel, about 6 nautical miles away from shore. It is mainly sandbar sharks, a few dusky sharks, and Adi Barash in her work has shown some site fidelity. As you can see of this, one of those animals is this female here with the broken jaw that has been seen for a couple of years, coming again and again. Adi Barash has been pioneering our shark research in our station. This is another aggregation, very coastal as you can see, again in Ashdod, in the outlet of the power plant, of the electricity power plant. It is apparently only sandbar sharks. We still haven't done some tagging there. And as you can see, there is a very large aggregation there. The water there are not as warm. They are only 19 degrees. And the surrounding degrees at the time is about 17. It is a late winter, early spring aggregation. It's quite short in period of time. And the main aggregation in the middle of Israel, in the coastal power plant, here the water is warmer. It's about 24 degrees when the surrounding is about 16 to 17. It is mainly dusky shark, which comes late November. And later on in the season, sandbar sharks aggregate there in smaller numbers that you've seen, apparently. And they live around May, more or less. We've decided to start our tagging project there since it's quite close to our research station, and in that sense it was easy for us to start this work. I would like to thank Doc Samuel Gruber. I'm very grateful for him. He unfortunately died this year. He helped me a lot with advice, and he also invited me to his shark club in Bimini in Bahamas, where I stayed there for a couple of weeks, tagging with them, learning the protocols for handling and for tagging, and with small adjustment to our coast, we are following his methodologies. So our long-term shark tagging project mainly targets the dusky shark. Adi Barash later on will tell you sum up of the first 3 years, mainly of our acoustical work. So far we have tagged 35 dusky sharks, 34 females, so it's mainly female aggregation. Out of them, 19 we've implemented the acoustical tag. And there is a small aggregation of sandbar sharks. We've tagged 16. All of them are males, so it's a gender bias aggregation, and 10 of them got acoustical tag. We're always happy to release them alive and happy. We hope happy, anyway. But happy to be released from the boat, for sure. Happy to release them alive and happy. We hope happy. Sorry. Happy to be released from the boat. The vicinity to the coastline and the warm water temperature there brings a lot of, as you can see, interested visitors. And this is a good ground for us to learn to research human-shark interaction and behavior of sharks. And this is what is Ziv Tzemach Shamir, our PhD student, is doing as part of his PhD. We are also going offshore. This is mainly due to the work that we're doing on the bluefin tuna. We're doing this together in collaboration with Professor Barbara Bloch, and we're very proud of that. And in that sense, we encounter, we're working there with longline fishermen, and we encounter quite huge mako sharks, as you can see in this footage here, and also quite a good number of big-eye treasure shark, and this one is the first one that we've actually satellite tagged. This is part of Eyal Bigal's work, and we're doing that in collaboration with a tuna fisherman longliner. As far as we know, and maybe someone can correct me, but we think it is the first big-eye treasure shark satellite tagged in the Mediterranean. and actually it just popped up a few days ago, and this map here is really the first run that we've done yesterday, a draft of the track that this shark did. The satellite tag popped up in Lebanon, and unfortunately we weren't able to get to the tag. Due to the short time of this talk, I didn't go through all the methodologies that we're doing in our lab, but I would like to point out that we are going into the eDNA, which is very exciting, and also we have a student starting a microbiome of the tag shark as another research for the monitoring of their health. And I would like to end up and conclude this talk by inviting you first to collaborate. I think there's a lot of options in our area here, as you've seen, and we'll be happy to have invited researcher in our lab doing the tagging with us.
Thank you. Thank you for interesting presentation and beautiful video. We have time for discussion. Thank you. Any questions? We have time for discussion. Any questions?
Due to the short time of this talk, I didn't go through all the... Well, the main fishery in Israel is bottom trawling. There is not much bycatch of sharks there, mainly of rays, which is quite obviously a big problem. There is some long lining, pelagic, which is occur during the breeding season of the tuna, which happens in May and June in Israel. Apart from that, there is bottom longliners, which catch sometimes sharks and rays. I'm happy to say that the work that is being done by the nature reserve authorities for protecting them is quite good, and most fishermen follow those rules. If they bring them to the market, people tell them off, and they'll get a fine for that. So it's like, it seems like an oasis for those sharks that are not kosher to eat. So it's easy to protect them. An oasis.
Other questions?
That are not kosher to eat, so it's easy to protect them.
Okay, so I got one, just a curiosity. How many days after tagging the tags popped up in the Alopius superciliosus, the big-eyed treasure shark?
The treasure shark was about 2.5 months. Actually, yesterday we've discussed it with Barbara, and we think it went too deep for the satellite, for the tags, and it popped up because of that. Earlier, we've put it for 5 months.
Okay, thank you.
Hello. I'm just wondering, you talked about satellite tags. Are you doing acoustic tagging? Because in that area of the thermal thing that you talked about, it would be very interesting to know
our main work is acoustical tagging. Adi Barash will tell about that later, so that's why I didn't go into that. Yeah, it's very interesting stuff coming out of that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. The next speaker is Danilo Malara from Sessione Zoologica in Tondorno in Italy. Shark attack competitors to large pelagic predators in the Strait of Messina, Central Mediterranean Sea.
Good morning, everyone.
Treasure shark was about 2.5 months. Actually, yesterday we've discussed it with Barbara.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming today. My name is Danilo Malara, and today I'm going to talk about shark's attack, competitor to large pelagic predators in the Strait of Messina. So top predators, they play an important role in our ocean. They are exhibit a top-down control, lower trophic level, and they are life history characteristics, so slow growth rate, late maturity and fecundity rates. Not all, but some of them, they are considered apex predator and are able to attack other large predators. Some of them are also considered predators. They are attracted by alarm cruise, fish distress stimuli, body fluids released by an animal in distress or in danger. And this one to make the capture more energetically efficient. So in the state of Messina in the last few years, there have been different records of shark attacking the catch during the harpoon fishing activity that is carried out during the summer seasons. So the main aim of this work is to report these attacks using the interview to fishermen and photo and video records. So the area we are talking about is the state of Messina. Is one of the most important sub-region for marine biodiversity in the Mediterranean Sea. This is located in South Italy, between Sicily and the Italian peninsula. It is the body of water that connects the Ionian Sea with the Tyrrhenian Sea. This area is characterized by very strong tidal currents that, along with the bottom morphology, they're creating upwelling phenomenon, bringing from the bottom to the surface nutrients and making this area very highly productive and biodiversity hotspot. This is also an important area where different pelagic species are coming here seasonally. So one of these one is the swordfish, and for this reason, this area is one of the most important swordfish spawning area in Mediterranean Sea. And here there is seasonally, so from May to end of August, is carried out in a particularly fishing activity with harpoon that has very ancient origin. So the boats used for this kind of fisheries are very picturesque boats. They have a very high antenna here, where the observers are at the top, and then there is a long bridge where the harpooner is at the end of this bridge. So generally, when the when the fish are sighted from the top, the boats go in the direction of the fish, and the harpooner try to catch them. So the main species catch is basically the swordfish, but also occasional catches happen during the season. So they catch sunfish, tuna, dolphin fish, Mediterranean spearfish. In the past, when the laws was mainly restricted, they used to catch also some sharks. Felucca boats are used also for scientific purpose. Our group tagged different fish such as swordfish, Mediterranean spearfish, giant David ray, and also can be used for other activities, such as we collaborated with other group, other university for other kind of research. The Sicilian harpoon fleet is composed of 10 vessels, and there are about 40 people involved in this activity. We interviewed 20 of them. Just for your knowledge, there are other 6 vessels belonging to the Calabrian coast, but we haven't interviewed them for this work. So the kind of questions we asked were various. First of all, we were interested in to know the fishing experience of the fishermen. Then we asked information about if they ever saw any shark attacking the catch, the area where the attacks happen most, if the sharks attack increased in the last few years, and the reason why this happened. The species was attacked most by the sharks, the type of damage on the catch. We asked also information about if they were able to describe the attack and the shark species, and also if they were able to see some sharks even if it were not linked to the attacks. So we divided the fishermen in 3 different classes based on the fishing experience. More than 40 years of fishing experience, between 20 and 40 years of fishing experience, and less than 20 years of fishing experience. So based on the information we obtained, we found out that all the fishermen with more than 20 years of experience, they all agree that in the last 5 years, the sharks attack increasing in this area over the catch. And they think the main reason is the reduction of the drift net, illegal drift net, that increase not only the sharks attack, but also the presence of different pelagic animals such as turtles, mammals, and sharks. And also they observed since 2014 an increased number of juvenile sharks, mainly blue sharks. On the contrary, the youngest fishermen with less than 20 years of fishing experience, they sustain that the sharks attack remain unchanged. So all fishermen in general, they agree that the Strait of Messina is the area where most of the attacks happen, while the Tyrrhenian Sea and Ionian Sea are the second best choice. So the bites happen generally in one part of the animal body, and depends which part was attacked. The fishermen were able to sell the product, other times not. So here there are some example of fish attacked by shark in different years with different weight. In general, the swordfish is the main prey, but also information about tuna from some fishermen has been recorded, but no photo evidence of this. And then there is a video coming out from the obtained from the felucca boat, where a mago shark is eating giant David ray, and this one was recorded in the state of Messina as well. So in general, there are not information about fish that are smaller than 60 kilos, but there is also an underestimation of the attacks, because sometimes happen after the fish is harpooned, they go on the bottom, on the water column. So sometimes it gets loose from the harpoon. So it's unclear if it gets loose because the harpoon didn't get in the flesh very well, or because maybe a large animal was able to steal the entire catch. In general, the fishermen sustain that the attacks happen in the water column and or on the bottom of the ocean, so they were not able to observe the shark species. But they recorded before the attacks different species of shark, such as blue shark, short fin mago, and great white. Often the great white is confused with the short fin mago. So another evidence of the shark's attack comes from one of our tagging program. This year we ran a tagging program on Mediterranean spearfish, where we tag 3 Mediterranean spearfish, 2 of them using the felucca boat. When we retrieve one of the tagged with the Mediterranean species tagged with felucca boat, we observe a very unusual dipping behavior for the species with no light level at some point. So we probably come up with the conclusion that this unusual behavior is because the tag was inside the stomach of the shark or a large species, and probably the best conclusion at the moment is that stomach from the tag, where we apply the tag, maybe have attracted one of the shark species present in this area, and the shark had dinner or lunch during the day. And so, but we are still working on the best conclusion at the moment. So in conclusion, the state of Messina is one of the most biodiversity hotspots in the Mediterranean Sea. Is different pelagic predators inhabit this area. And in the last few years, there have been an increase of sharks attack over the catch. Probably because the blood coming out from the wound where the injured fish was harpooned may have attracted them in that area. And probably the increase on sharks attack and the pelagic animal in general in this area, it may be connected to the ban of the drift nets. Also, probably the attacks may be linked to one of the different species of sharks, such as blue shark, great white, or short fin mago. So there is a need of more research in this area, especially to understand the shark species that are present here, their feeding movement behavior in this area, also to understand the migratory, if they are migratory or resident individual, and to monitor their presence. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Danilo, for this interesting presentation. We have time for questions, comments. Yes, one. Thank you, Danilo, for this interesting presentation. We have time for questions, comments.
Thank you, Danilo. Maybe I missed this, but what's the frequency of attacks? Like, how many attacks per fish you will have? Like,
so in the past, they talk about the fishermen. They talk about 1 or 2 attacks during the season.
okay.
But in the last few years, they like this year in 2019, I personally recorded just 4 attacks. Sometimes it's difficult with fishermen because fishermen are not willing to give you much information about things, especially when it's talking about sharks. So with my connection, I was able to get few data out, but sometimes it's quite difficult with them.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Any questions?
Thank you for the presentation. And did you consider also the attack of some other shark, like the six-gill shark that in the strait is present?
Thanks, this is a good question. So I didn't report the other shark species because the fishermen didn't tell me, but there is a possibility there are different sharks in the area. We know that in this area there is a blunt-nosed six-gill shark, the Xanthus griseus, but personally I'm not really expert in this field at the moment, so I don't think at the moment is probably one of the best options because it's a very deep species, and I don't think it's coming at the surface basically. But yeah, can be a possibility. So I'm not excluding, but I just reported what the fishermen told me at the moment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, the last one, please. Okay.
Ciao Danilo, congratulations for the presentation. I was wondering, you were saying that the fishermen and you think that maybe the increase of the attacks is due to the drift nets, that they're being banned. Are you also considering that maybe like the prey of the sharks is being depleted, overfishing, and that's why they need to approach more the catches that are on the pelagic lines?
Yeah, this is also a possibility. So at the moment I'm not giving any conclusion. So we need to analyze more the data. So this is just reporting what I got from the questionnaire from the analyze more the data. So there are different possibilities. Maybe can give us a conclusion. But yeah, maybe DriftNet is an option. What you say is another option as well. I think in the future we are going to try more deep conclusion on that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Danilo.
Thank you.
Okay. We move to the next presentation. Edgar Garcia from University of Baja California. The occurrence of white shark during the ecotourism season in Guadalupe Island. General observation related to environmental factor. University of Baja California. The occurrence of white shark during the ecotourism season in Guadalupe Island. General observation related to environmental factor.
Thank you, Doc. Hola, my name is Edgar Becerril, and today I will talk to you about the white shark's occurrence related to environmental factors in Guadalupe Island, Mexico. The studies of white sharks, particularly of those related to the effect of the environment on the presence of the white sharks, has been carried out in countries like South Africa, Australia, or the United States. To such studies, we know that the presence of the white sharks is higher under certain environmental conditions that also are related to a negative affectations on their prey, which favors the predation of the sharks. Indeed, these predation events has been used as units for the statistical analysis of such studies and have allowed to determine very important or relevant information about the habitat use and the sexual segregation of this species of the white shark, of course. However, I'm thinking in other localities, in other countries, how can we study this topic when predation occurs in deep waters? Or how can we describe this environmental preference if we cannot see the predation events at the surface? And even worse, what happens when you are an undergraduate student and you don't have enough money to invest in high-tech submarines that usually got beaten as soon as they get to deeper waters? Well, those were exactly the questions in Guadalupe Islands a few years ago, because although we know something about trophic ecology, the movements or the behavior of the white sharks, we almost know or know almost nothing about the basic ecology of this species in the area. Additionally, it's very important for me to say that Guadalupe Island in Mexico, it could be considered like the only oceanic aggregation site for white sharks where ecotourism occurs. If you think in South Africa, in California, in Australia, all of those are continental aggregation sites, so it's more like a coastal environment. While in Guadalupe, because it's very far away from the coast, it's considered an oceanic environment. What is important to say that it's located at 240 kilometers offshore Baja California Peninsula in the Mexican Pacific. If you want to go there, you need to take a train. You need to take a live-aboard boat from the port of Ensenada, and in a trip of 24 hours, you will arrive to Guadalupe Island. So it's very far away. Because we want to know something about this basic ecology, we had the objective to provide information related about the white checks occurrence and the environmental factors through the use of pure observational data and statistical modeling in a minimally invasive methodology. Except maybe for the math, that sometimes is a really invasive headache when you use statistical modeling. To achieve this objective, we took data from August to November of the years 2012, 2013, and 2014 on board the cage diving boats that visit Guadalupe during that period, especially in the northeastern part of the island that is known as Rada Norte Bay, where there is a higher presence of white sharks in comparison with other parts of the island. The data of the presence, according to the sightings of white sharks, was classified related to sexual maturity, while all the environmental factors that are listed in here were obtained during each sighting. With this ecological data, we were able to use generalized additive models to determine the probability of occurrence of the white sharks to each group. However, like other studies, this research has obvious limitations that are related to the effect of the bait, because we are working on board the cage diving boats and they use bait to attract the sharks, and that all of our data come from the surface layer of the ocean. Because we had these limitations, also we have assumptions. And the main assumption that we had is that because there is a constant stimulus, that is the bait, the occurrence of white sharks will change according to the environmental factors that are highly variable in this bay. Thanks to 98 days of expeditions, we got more than 6,000 sightings of white sharks with an average of 59 sightings per day. And I will present to you, group by group of the white sharks, according to sexual maturity, only the significant environmental factors that affect the presence of the white shark. The probability of occurrence of the mature males was higher with cold water temperatures for Guadalupe Island, of course, during good visibility, during daytime between 6 and 4 o'clock p.m., and in the north part of this bay, where the depths are approximately 200 meters. Why this modeling is telling us about this location? According to the data of acoustic telemetry, all these mature males are very close to a pinniped colony of elephant seals. That is one of the most important reproductive colonies in this island. So just with math, we are getting a very similar result that was obtained with the use of acoustic telemetry. So using math, you can get very close results to other invasive techniques. In this area, in this beach, we have seen a lot of scars on the elephant seals. And although we cannot see the predation at the moment, we have seen these scars. And also sometimes there are carcasses that come to the surface of the elephant seals, and the white sharks start or finish the job on the surface. But it's very, very infrequent. Regarding the immature males, we observed that the probability of occurrence was higher in contrast to the mature individuals during warm water conditions with bad visibility, after nights with full moon, during high tides, and in the southernmost and northernmost part of the island. Why is the modeling presenting something like this? Well, in these 2 points, there is a very, very important spot for sport fishing, because they say that is a very or a high abundance of bony fishes like tunas or yellowtail jacks, that it could be related to the predation in shallow water of the immature sharks, of the immature males. And the location in here is an average of 100 meters, and according to acoustic telemetry, is also the same result, but with modeling. One interesting observation that we had, where you are looking at a carcass of a baby Guadalupe 4 sea lion, or Guadalupe 4 seal, I'm sorry, that during August and September, when there's a high abundance of immature males, it's very common to see these carcasses, full of bites and sometimes without the head. We had not seen this attack at the moment, but we can see a lot of these carcasses, and this is frequent. So if you go in Guadalupe and you start seeing like black buoys, they are not black buoys, they are dead babies. Maybe because the high tide, and because they are too young, they don't know very well how to swim, or they get drowned. So after that night with full moon and with high tides, it will be possible that the sharks are feeding on them. Regarding the mature males, we have observed that the probability of occurrence is higher with warm water temperatures, with good and bad visibility, at the beginning and the end of each day, with clear skies, but in the deepest areas of Guadalupe Island. According to the model, they occurs in waters with depths that are more than 5,000 meters. And this habitat is very similar to one cetacean that is known as the big whale. This is just a hypothesis. We are working with a project on this cetacean, and they will try to find out what is the relation or the trophic relation in the ecology of the white sharks and this cetacean that is highly abundant in this area of the island. The last group, the immature females, the probability of occurrence was higher between the 9 and 4 o'clock, with cloudy skies, with high tides, and in the center of the bay when there are depth waters of more than 1,000 meters. We don't know exactly what happened with this group, but in other species, like in the scalloped hammerhead, it has been observed that there's an early sexual segregation of the sharks. So maybe these females or immature females are looking for different prey in order to get more nutrients. At the end, we can conclude that the probability of occurrence change between environmental conditions, the hour and the area, and that it's probable that a segregation between sex and age is occurring in Guadalupe. In general, immature sharks was present in shallow, murky, and warm waters, while the mature individuals in deep, clear, and cold waters, related mainly or mostly to the predation of pinnipeds. But what happened with the big females? Why they prefer warm waters? This could be related to a very important part of the gestation period, that this warm water could favor the development of the embryos. And in Guadalupe, we have seen a lot of big mamas, like this picture that I showed to you, and right now we are evaluating the hormones to know if this is true or not. At the end, this is we have a lot of questions, we have a lot of hypotheses, and future research will know if we accept or reject such statements, as science usually does. So thank you so much for your attention. It's a pleasure to be here with you again.
Thank you. Any questions?
¿Was good? Sí.
No.
Sí.
Hola, muy buena presentación.
Gracias.
Sorry, very good presentation.
Thank you.
So I was wondering, are you studying any other shark? Is there any other sharks in this island, and is anybody studying them in your team?
I have only seen baby mako sharks, but baby, and nobody's studying them, just white sharks.
So it's pretty much white sharks
Yes.
dominating this area.
Yes, well, in 2014 we have cage diving with whale sharks.
Oh,
Whale sharks in Guadalupe Island
how random.
at the same moment with the white sharks, but it's very weird.
Oh, okay, thanks.
Was something warm condition. Sí.
Other questions?
Hi. So from what I understand, the photo ID in Guadalupe is like super intense. Like you guys pretty much name every shark, and there's like a book of IDs for the sharks. So have you considered using like those photo sightings, those images, and like taking environmental conditions there to like get a, like, I mean, you have a pretty big database, but like just to like, you know, kind of like contrast what you're getting with your like diving sightings and those photo IDs from like past years or future?
Yes, indeed, this data comes from approximately 100 sharks that were photo identified. However, for statistical modeling was not necessary. But for example, when you work with behavior and environmental conditions, yes, in that way is very important, and we have the data of each shark. Yeah, the name of this one is Chuggy, of that shark. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The next speaker Nuri Basusta, a new reproduction and nursery ground for sandbar shark, Carcharinus plumbeus, Northwest Mediterranean Sea. Thank you.
Dear chairs, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my presentation. I would like to inform you that on the new reproduction and nursery ground for the sandbar shark, Carcharinus plumbeus, yumurtalık white Gulf of Iskenderun, northeastern Mediterranean Sea. The sandbar shark is one of the biggest shark inhabiting Mediterranean. It is a cosmopolitan species and well known from Boncuk Cove in the Mediterranean coast of Turkey. This species is currently assessed as vulnerable on the EUCN red list, and the species is listed as endangered for both the Mediterranean Sea and Turkish coasts. A primary nursery ground defined as areas where parturition occurs of Boncuk Cove Carcharinus plumbeus population. It is distributed Eastern Atlantic, including Mediterranean and Western Atlantic, Central Pacific, Indian Ocean, and Australia. The aim of the study is to determine secondary reproduction and nursery area of sandbar shark from yumurtalık white Eastern Mediterranean Sea. The documented nursery ground of Carcharinus plumbeus in the world, as you in this picture, 7 of them in Western Atlantic and in the Mediterranean, Adriatic Sea, Gulf of Gabes in Tunisia, and Boncuk Cove. I don't know, maybe in coast of Israel, I don't know. First experimental fishing operation was carried out on July 24-25 in 2017. Sandbar shark specimens were accidentally caught by a pelagic bluefish longline at a depth of 7 to 9 meter of yumurtalık bite, northeastern Mediterranean. This area in here, yumurtalık bite in the Gulf of Iskenderun. Number 9 fishing hooks were used in lock line consisting of 100 hooks. Lisa saliens gray mullet was used in the long line fishing rod as a bait. The feds were cut into 2 pieces and hooked long line fishing rod, but picture lost. Pelagic long line here. Captured sandbar sharks were transferred to the laboratory of Fisheries Faculty of Frat University, where they were examined for an umbilical scars, identified, measured, weighted, sexed, and photographed. Sexes were determined by the presence of claspers. The total lengths, fork lengths were determined to the nearest 1 millimeter and weighted. Each specimen was weighted with the digital scale nearest to the 1 gram. The specimens were present at the Museum of Faculty of Fisheries at University. Total number of individual caught, 7 individuals were obtained by fishing tackle with 100 hooks. The rate is quite remarkable, 7%. Even the target bluefish caught catch at 10 or 12% rates. In addition, a shark individual was caught in the sampling carried out on July 27 in second operation fishing. As you in this picture, minimum there were 4 males and 4 females. Minimum weights and total lengths, as you see in this picture, and maximum lengths and weights. In this, in the shark species, the embryo is connected to the mother by an umbilical cord. The umbilical scar is still clearly visible on these newly born sharks. In this study, umbilical scars changed from 4.1 and from to 5 millimeters. Here is umbilical scars. The sandbar shark neonates with total lengths of 60-70 centimeters have regularly captured by the bottom trawlers in Iskenderun Bay, although in small quantities since 1996. The Carcharodonus plumbeus neonate captured from depth of 15-20 meters of Yumurtalık coast and further observation of the species in the same area by Kabasakal provides support the possibility another sandbar shark nursery ground in Turkey. A total of 55 specimens of sandbar shark neonates and adults were observed in the same area by Bashusta. The presence of neonate and adult individuals in this area suggests that may be using this region as a parturition and nursery area. Castro reported that the decision respecting the use of an area as a nursery by given species was made considering the presence of newborn, juveniles, and gravid females. This study provides a new record of neonate or juvenile sandbar shark from Yumurtalık Bay, northeastern Mediterranean Sea. It was determined that Yumurtalık Bay in Iskenderun Bay can be the second nursery area of the sandbar sharks in the Mediterranean after Eastern Mediterranean, after Boncuk Cove in the Gökova Bay. Thank you very much for your attendance.
Thank you, Nuri, for this interesting presentation. Any questions? One over there.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. I would like to ask if you're going to ask for some protection for this area to the administration.
Yeah. protection area.
If you're going to ask for some form of protection from fisheries of this area, because it seems that it is so important for the
Yes,
species.
but now it was banned in using trawling in this area, but open the log line fishing. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Another question here, Francesco.
Are you also thinking about using any other non-invasive survey methods for monitoring the species over there?
No, I don't think so, because this study not the main study. Our main study on the bluefish fishing, bluefish fishing. So depend on fishing methods.
Sorry. Oh, okay. So that was a commercial fisher or was a survey? Sorry, I may have missed this.
Experimental, just only, not commercial.
Okay.
Not commercial. Experimental. Long line fishing, bluefish, Pomatomus saltatrix.
Yeah. So I'm wondering whether in the future, since there are maybe 2 places or 3 places in the Mediterranean where we can still see sandbar sharks, whether it would be best to approach monitoring and studying these species with less invasive approaches.
I don't know.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
Okay. No more questions. Another one. The last one, please. Over there.
Thank you for the presentation. For example, in Mexico, this species is very uncommon. It's very rare to see it. But I agree with the comment of our college. Maybe you can use cameras with bait, and in that way you can get a lot of more data. Maybe if you use lasers or something similar, you can get more information and without the need of killing. It was very, very interesting.
Yeah.
But maybe in the future it could be a good idea to use cameras.
Yeah. Need more funding.
Okay, thank you, Nuri. Thank you again.
You're welcome.
We move the next presentation, which is Sophie Mycock from the Netherlands, of Shark and Man, data source from ecotourism to study the impact of environmental conditions on great white shark behavior.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sophie Maycock, and I'm here today to talk to you about the work that I've been doing utilising data sourced from ecotourism to study the behaviour of the great white shark, Carcharodon carcharias. So I have been working in collaboration with an ecotourism company called White Shark Africa, who offer cage diving trips to tourists in Mossel Bay in the Western Cape of South Africa. Mike Ladley, that you can see in this image here, also added a longer-term volunteer project to the company, whereby students could come on board as part of the crew for an extended period of time, and they could learn how to work with great white sharks, both in the classroom and in the field. After qualifying, they would then be allowed to contribute to onboard data collection. So for 26 months between 2009 and 2011, data were collected regarding the sharks that were sighted on these ecotourism trips. And this included not only the shark sightings themselves, but also the behavior and the environmental conditions on the day of sampling. So I have been analysing these data using binomial response GLM modelling with as many variables as I could possibly think of. So these include environmental conditions. So this included the weather, the water conditions, temperatures, and also included the, that says individual shark variables. So this included the sex and the size of the shark, and also the name that was used to identify it if it was recognized. Also related to the presence of conspecifics. So this included the order that the individual sharks arrived at the boat, and also included how many sharks were actually seen on that trip that day. And I also included anthropic variables. So this includes the location, the date and the time of the sampling, and also the type of attractants, the bait and chum, which were used for that trip. And we wanted to consider whether any or all of these variables were related to the presence of certain behavioral responses. So the behavioral response variables that I have been using in my modelling, I called behavioural states, for want of a better term. These were the presence or absence, so that's a binomial response variable. And I used behaviours which were recorded during data collection to assign each sighting to a behavioural state. These were called aggressive, cautious, and inquisitive. So if a shark was seen to be tail slapping, gaping, or exerting dominance over a conspecific, it was assigned to aggressive behavioural state. However, if it gave way to a conspecific, or we saw any startle responses, we assigned it to cautious behavioural state. And finally, if we saw any spy hopping or mouthing, we assigned the shark to inquisitive behavioural state. So what I want to talk to you about today are these two questions. First off, are there certain environmental conditions that can be related to different behaviours in these sharks? And also, how can we use ecotourism data? And what are the limitations and what are the benefits of using data of this type? So after I excluded any incomplete data in the set, I was left with 288 sampling trips, which amounted to over 660 hours of observation time. We had 984 individual shark samplings to work with, and the average size of these sharks was 2.5 meter TL. The vast majority, therefore, were juvenile, and we did not see any mature sharks during sampling. We also saw many females in comparison to males, with a ratio of one female to every 6.8, one male to every 6.8 females, sorry. So when we pull all of these sightings together and look at their behavior, you can see in this Venn diagram, we found that cautious behavioral state was the one we observed most commonly. And interestingly, we found that aggressive was the state that we saw least commonly. But we did also find that there were sightings of sharks which were both cautious and inquisitive behavioral states, was very common, so there were some crossovers. But when we look at these behaviours and the GLM modelling, we found very interesting results about which variables were significant. So the model for cautious behaviour was simplified to only include the arrival sequence, the total length of the shark, and the bait type that we were using. Sorry about the formatting here, but what this actually means is that if this animal was the first, second, or third shark to arrive at the boat that day, it was generally more cautious. Also, smaller sharks were more cautious compared to larger sharks, and this was around 1.9 meters we found that they were cautious. And also, when we were using tuna and snook as a bait mix, they were generally more cautious. However, the model for aggressive behaviour was simplified to only include the minimum air temperatures and the arrival time in the final model. So that is to say that when the 3-day running average minimum air temperature was colder, so this was below 17.7 degrees, and when sampling was conducted in the early morning before 11 a.m., the sharks were commonly more aggressive. Interestingly, our model for inquisitive behaviour was also simplified to include the arrival time, but also the sea surface temperature and also the observer that was taking the data on that day. So what this means is that if the arrival time was in the early morning, the sampling showed that there was more inquisitive behaviours at that time. And also we saw more inquisitive behaviours with warmer waters. So this was above 17.5 Celsius. Now, the effect of the observer is a little bit more difficult to untangle. So let's have a look at all of the significant variables together. So it's important to note that there were a lot of crossovers in these models about which variables were found to be significant, and that these were actually all kind of interrelated. So what we saw is that both aggressive and inquisitive models included the time of the sampling as significant. White sharks in South Africa very rarely seem to be hunting after around 11 a.m. So this seems to be showing us the dial pattern in the shark's behaviour, with the aggressive and inquisitive behaviours happening in the morning time when the sharks are in their kind of hunting mode. Now, the significance of the order that the sharks arrived at the boat, and also the total length of the sharks, tells us that the presence of conspecifics and also the individual's hierarchy amongst those conspecifics affected its behaviour. So this brings us to an interesting conclusion. There's often concern that ecotourism activities could cause aggressive behaviours to increase in sharks. But our modelling shows us that, in fact, these variables were only significant when we were modelling cautious behaviours. Now, the significance of the sea surface temperature and the minimum air temperature in aggressive and inquisitive modelling shows us that environmental conditions, especially temperatures, had an effect on shark behaviour. As these cycle with the season, it seems that there might be some seasonal effect of behaviour, with cooler temperatures giving us more aggressive behaviours and warmer temperatures allowing us to see more inquisitive behaviours. Now, as I mentioned, the effect of the observer is a bit more difficult to deconstruct. The observers did actually change throughout the year, depending when volunteers were on the boat. So it is possible that this is giving us some sort of seasonality to cautious behaviours. But it's also possible that this is highlighting a little bit of bias in our methodology. And this actually links in with the effect of the bait type in this model as well. It is possible that sharks were more cautious or more interested in certain baits as their selective feeders, but it is also possible that these variables are showing us how human activity was impacting upon the behaviours that we were seeing. And this identifies a problem that I'm sure many of you understand. We always have this problem when using this methodology because we are actively altering the shark's behaviour in order to be able to observe it at the boat. However, we did find that this ecotourism dataset was incredibly valuable. We've been able to ask it so many questions, many more than what I'm able to squeeze into this presentation here. But we just wanted to let you know that we think it's important that when you're using ecotourism data to practice quality control and to use rigorous statistical tests when looking at the data and to interpret your results with a consideration of the data collection methodology. We also found it really helpful to have an ongoing collaboration with our ecotourism professionals while we were analysing these results, because these guys are genuine experts. They have a huge amount of contact time with these animals in the wild, and they can offer really interesting insights. So firstly, not only are these guys experts, secondly, it also allows you to open a dialogue with a significant stakeholder in the area. Ecotourism companies drive conservation in their own right, and if we as scientists collaborate with them more, we'll be able to give them a platform in which their voices can be heard and their expertise used. So I really think that ecotourism data could represent a hugely powerful resource that we haven't been exploiting as so thank you very much. I hope that everything was interesting and helpful to your work. I'd just like to mention my co-authors at IBL and Leiden University who couldn't be here today, and especially my wonderful colleague Mike Ladley at White Shark Africa for all of his help. And also a huge Thank you to the Save Our Seas Foundation and the board at the EEA for their generosity with the bursary that allowed me to be here to speak to you today. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much for interesting
Thank you.
presentation. We have a short time for discussion. Any question?
Hi there.
Hi.
So I noticed in your sheets that you also note markings on the body of the animal.
Yes.
And I was wondering if you ever had repeated sightings of the same individual, and if so, have you noticed a change in behavior over time?
This is actually another part of my thesis that I couldn't quite squeeze in today, sadly. Yes, we did. We identified 55 specific animals that we saw with distinct phyllopractry over the years. And we've actually been using the data to assess the personality of the animals as well. So if you want to learn more about that, it might be worth having a chat afterwards, because it might be a bit extended for here. But yes, we have been. Yeah.
Okay. Another last one. Okay.
Hi.
Hi.
So you worked with for this study, or maybe for this presentation, you only work with one company?
Yes.
So I wonder, is there a plan or possibility to expand this through a few more? Because then your database would be a lot bigger, although it is big already. But, you know, like you mentioned, working with stakeholders and using ecotourism. So have you considered extending this work to other companies?
That is exactly what I'd like to do next. Yeah. So I think it's really powerful to have data from different countries as well and analyze them in the same way to look at differences. But yeah, I definitely want to try and approach more companies and get more people involved to see if their data is different or gives us different information. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. The next speaker is Elena Tamburin for Mexico. Habitat use of juvenile white shark and short-fin mako sharks in a nursery area in the west coast of Baja California, Mexico. Please.
Okay. Hi to everyone. My name is Elena, and today I will talk you about my PhD project that took place in the other side of the world. So I didn't show up frequently in Europe, but I'm very happy to present this in my home country. And as you know, the white shark and the mako shark are one of the most charismatic species in the world. We have a lot of information about these guys. We have huge gaps about the knowledge of the mako shark, but in both cases we have a lot of information that is focused on the adult stages of both species. We don't know really well what is going on with the babies of both species. We know that they have a biology and ecology that is very different from the adult, because, for example, they don't have the impulse to reproduce. So, for example, the habitat selection is strongly driven from the search of prey that they can easily catch, and also for protection. So these babies normally aggregate in what we call the shark nursery area, that are like coastal regions there with a high primary production, with a lot of prey protected, but also that overlap with the mainly fishery activity regions. So this can cause a decrease in the juvenile stages that are the most important for such species like mako white shark that have a long lifespan. For this, the object of this project was to determine the habitat use of both species in a nursery area, also evaluate if they were sharing resources, and we decided to do this with the stable isotope in different tissue. Why we choose the stable isotope? Because the stable isotope are in the easy way, there are two versions of the same element based on a different number of protons, which make one lighter and one heavier. The heavier, can stay and can be fixed in the tissue, which convert in a very good tracer for diet. Indeed, the stable isotope can give you, again, in the easy way, they can give you the zone when the shark is feeding, is coastal or oceanic, and the trophic level with the nitrogen. It's not always so easy because they are associated to primary production events or bacterial activity, so they became associated to environmental variation, and they can use to track the habitat feature and to select the isoscapes. The stable isotope can also give you an idea of different diet based on the different turnover change of the tissue that is also strongly related with the kind of the molecule of the tissue. There are matrices that are easy to orient, like for example the blood or the plasma, and there are other matrices like bones that are very difficult to destroy and rebuild. So you can have long-term tissue, like the muscle, for example, or even the blood, and you can have shorter matrix like the blood and the plasma that is indeed very, very short. So, well, I live here in Mexico. This is my point of work, very far away, but anyway, this is a very huge bay that is almost close by this island that will become more important later in my talk. What I want you to keep in mind is this area have a high level of primary production, a strong population of cyanobacteria, and it has an anticyclonic gyre that produce this big hole in the primary production in all the area. And also it creates an oxy water and recycling condition of nutrients. We took the samples from the artisanal fishery of Mexico, where the mako shark is target and the white shark is still a bycatch. We collect all these number of samples. In some cases we did very well, in other not, but the young white shark is very difficult to get. And what I want you to observe is first, and we collect based on the birth size and the maturity size. We had all newborns and juveniles, both for mako and for white sharks. As we were able, during this study, to calculate and estimate the turnover rate of the mussel that we propose as a new data for this species, that you can observe that is really different from the one that's proposed in literature. And this is probably due because these species are more metabolic active and more larger compared to a benthonic shark. So all the results of the mussel refer to this time period, and we were able to do the same with the bloods, with all the blood compounds. Indeed, for the blood is the first reference that we show in literature. Inside the data, these are all the data we collect, and you can see that there is a similar pattern between tissue. What is strange are the level of carbon that are typical of oceanic zone, because a coastal zone normally has -14, -15, or -13 also. And also the level of nitrogen are very, very high. The adult white shark normally has 18, 17. So we start to ask ourselves what's going on, why this juvenile shark has this strong increase in nitrogen in particular, and these negative values in carbon. And we start to thought that probably it was due to a change in the baseline of this area. Indeed, we compare the values of the organic matter for carbon after the application of a trophic discrimination factor, and we can see these values align for the one that our sharks present, and the same happens for the nitrogen. If we apply this correlation for the muscle tissue and the plasma to the prey that we capture inside Vizcaíno, you can see that the values perfectly align, suggesting that these sharks are feeding in dystrophin change, and they are reflected these changes in baseline. And to prove this, also we compare these values with other predators that we know that are strongly resident inside the bay, like the California sea lion, And you can see that there is no very different, particularly for nitrogen, suggesting that the animals that are resident and feeding inside this trophic change reflecting their tissue, particularly the nitrogen enrichment. This was also confirmed using, if we consider a tissue like the plasma, because the plasma is representing the free amino acid pool of an animal. This means that directly incorporating nitrogen sources inside the tissue, and in particular, if we compare the nitrogen values and the carbon of the prey inside the viscaino and the organic matter, we can see that they are very, very similar to the plasma tissue, meaning that probably this tissue directly represents the isotopic signature of viscaino. Also, for the turnover change that we estimate represent 7 days of the diet, which means that if these values are very similar to the trophic value, to the isotopic signature of viscaino, obviously it means that the sharks is still in the bay at least 7 days before we cooked it, which is confirmed for this mathematical model that is calculating the isotopic niche, and for the overlap you can see they are using the same resource throughout different tissue, long term and short term. We developed the same model for the muscle tissue to evaluate if they were over shared resources, and indeed we found partially this, both for muscle and what we compare between species and between tissue. And the last skills that we used was a mixing model that is normally used to check the habitat changes for different species. We created all this group of prey. The Sebastian Viscaino one is included this, and you can see that we have a strong change in the habitat use. The mako sharks have shift that is from the offshore shores, probably incorporated by the mothers, and then they shift to the inshore coastal area for the Lake Viscaino Bay, and the white shark shift from northern area like probably California to southern area like Viscaino. As last results, we collect also fishery records close to Isla Cedros, that is these are all newborns of baby white shark, and we also get adult pregnant female of mako with some embryos in the same island, suggesting that this island is probably an important pupping grounds for both species. As a conclusion, we were able to propose new isotopic rates. We demonstrated the escape of Viscaino. We also demonstrated that is a maternal transference for the isotopic signature due to the shift in the values nitrogen. The isotopic composition of both species suggests a sharing of resource in long-term time. These are all the outcomes that we get of this project, and I want to thank all the foundation that allows me to stay here, you for your attention, and I also want to take this occasion to make you an officially invitation to this Congress that is for the Pacific. I don't know many of you guys work in this side of the world, but if you want to come and if you want to visit La Paz, it's a wonderful city, you are more than welcome to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Elena, for this nice presentation. Questions or comments?
No, too much.
Okay, got one. Did you find any differences?
Sorry,
Don't worry about that. About males, females in isotope composition?
No, we don't find any difference because probably they are juveniles, so they start to segregate. Normally in sharks, they start to segregate when they became bigger. In this case, they do all the same. Which indeed, also the sharing resource between species start like at certain size. When the mako is juveniles and the baby white shark is still newborns, they start to share results probably based on the size. They have the same metabolic rate, so they found the same sources of it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So we move to the next presentation. Francisco Mascareño Suarez from Mexico, Shark Species Inventory on Cabo San Lucas, Mexico, using a touristic platform as methodology. Francisco. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Good morning. My project is Shark Species Inventory in Cabo San Lucas platform as a methodology. So, pelagic sharks are mainly oceanic and semi-oceanic species, and they are a small group as they only represent 6% of the elasmobranchs, and they show low variation of body plans in comparison with coastal species. Due to their complex life cycle, which means large migrations and basically a lot of movement, the research is difficult in terms of logistic and monetary terms. So in the last few years, tourist activities and citizen science have searched as an efficient method to study them, since they basically reduce the cost of studying these sharks. And you can study basic biology, such as abundance, movements, behavior, and distribution in some cases. So our hypothesis for this particular research was that due to the characteristics of the study area, which are highly variable throughout a year, we expected high species richness in the area and some seasonal patterns of relative abundance over the species we see over there. So our main goals here were to create an inventory for pelagic species in Cabo San Lucas, identify seasonal patterns for relative abundance, and collect data that supports the use of citizen science and tourism activities in this area for the monitoring of pelagic species. So our study area is Cabo San Lucas, which is in Mexico, on the southern tip of the Baja Peninsula. And it's a really important area since it's the union between the Gulf of California and the Pacific Ocean. So it is very variable throughout a year. It has a narrow continental platform, which means offshore, if you go out maybe 1 or 2 kilometers, you get depths of about 500 to 1,000 meters. And there's drastic changes in the water temperature over a year, with temperatures as low as 18 degrees Celsius in the winter and as high as 31 degrees Celsius in the summer. Those are our two main points of collecting data. So our material and methods was, we carried submarine census from 2016 to 2018, which means 1428 hours of monitoring. We used chumming to attract the sharks to the area. We collect some environmental variables like depth, water temperature, cloudiness, etc. And we collect some biological variables if we have sharks in the area, such as the species, the sex, and the size estimation. With this, we calculated monthly relative abundance, and we did calculated the sighting per unit of effort. So with results, so far we've observed 8 species, which are the short-fin mako shark, the silky shark, the blue shark, smooth hammerhead shark, dusky shark, Galapagos shark, the black tip shark, and the scalloped hammerhead shark. Of these 8 species, the most abundant are the silky shark, the mako, and the smooth hammerhead, with only 1 sighting of the scalloped hammerhead, the black tip shark, and the Galapagos shark on these 3 years. This is a graph showing like the relative abundance of shark per species, and the line is the effort. So what we can see is that during 2016 and 2017, the most abundant species was the silky shark, followed by the mako and the smooth hammerhead, and then the blue shark, and then the other ones are basically just 1 observation per year. And in 2018, we can see that the most abundant species was the mako shark, followed by the smooth hammerhead, and finally the silky shark. But as you can see, the effort during the warm season in 2018 was really low, so that is probably why the silky shark was not that abundant during that year. If we talk about like more specifically about the most abundant species, with the mako shark and the sighting per unit of effort, what we can see is that the shark is most abundant during the cold season, which goes from January till mid-May. And this shows a clear thermal preference for the species, inhabiting waters of about 17 to 22 degrees Celsius. But what we also want to see is that we have low, but we do have sightings during the warm season with temperatures of 32 degrees Celsius in some cases. And even though they're rare, in the Gulf of Mexico, mako sharks inhabit waters of about 25 to 27 degrees Celsius. So we came to the conclusion that mako sharks can inhabit warmer waters, but it's not their preference. They prefer cold waters. For the smooth hammerhead shark, we see that the shark is mostly present during the transitional season between the cold and warm season, with temperatures of about 24 to 26, 27 degrees Celsius from April till mid-July. And there's really not a lot of information about smooth hammerhead sharks around the world, but what we can say is that Couto and collaborators in Portugal find similar data with temperatures that coincide with the temperatures we observe these species. So probably its presence in the area is related to water temperature and seasonal upwellings. And finally, for the silky shark, we see that mostly we find the silky during the warm season, which goes from late July till November, early December. So this shows a clear thermal preference for the species in the area as well, preferring temperatures over 25 degrees Celsius. And we see that 23 degrees Celsius is like a temperature limitation for the species in the area. We don't find silky sharks with temperatures lower than that. And probably the presence of the silky shark during the summer has to do with praise in the area, thermal preferences, and also probably bathymetry. But we need more data to know for sure. So for conclusions, preliminary, because this is an ongoing project, we've observed 8 species of pelagic sharks so far, with the mako shark, silky, and smooth hammerhead being the most abundant. We suggest a seasonal replacement of the most abundant species throughout the year, since the mako shark occupies the bay during the winter, the smooth hammerhead during the transitional season, and the silky shark during the warm season. And we provide data that supports the use of tourism and citizen science on the approach and monitoring of these populations. And also we demonstrate that the use of non-invasive approaches like citizen science and tourism, it's a good way to study like basic biology of sharks, or even with funding more complex biology like movements and migrations. So I want to leave you with a small video of one of the interactions with a mako shark. And I want to thank you for your attention, and to the EEA for this platform. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Questions or comment?
You didn't show any data for sizes.
For
Do
sizes?
you have any idea if the sizes of the populations of the sharks?
Yes, I didn't want to make it longer since we were short on time. We do have the sizes. Mako sharks, we've seen from 60, 70 centimeters, so newborn, till 3 meters, which is a large adult. It was a female pregnant. And the average size for makos are between 170 centimeters and 2 meters and 10 centimeters long, approximately. Then for silky sharks, we normally see between 180 meters till 220. And for smooth hammerheads, we have individuals as small as 130 centimeters till the largest individual we saw, which was 4 meters long.
But do you see any changes throughout the year in terms of the sizes that
No.
decided?
With our models, we've seen that there's no difference during the months they appear. There's no difference in sizes.
Okay, other questions?
Hello.
Mm.
So you mentioned this was done through citizen science. So does that mean that you had a team of people or tourists doing these observations, or was it you?
No. So we, my coworker and I, do most of the collect the data when we are there, but neither of us live in Cabo. So we're using people that go into expeditions, mostly the guys that work there that are experts, take the data, and then we collect the data, but we do go out sometimes.
Because then, if that's the case, I was wondering, I mean, the guys that go out there probably are very knowledgeable, but then my question was, how do you confirm ID and size, since it's not the scientists doing it? But then you mentioned it's the guys that are there all the time.
Yeah,
every
the guys
day.
that are there all the
So they
time
probably
work
have a lot of
with,
knowledge.
they take photographs and laser photogrammetry.
Oh, they do that.
Yeah, we just started with that like a couple of months ago, maybe 6 months. Before that, we had marks on the boat, and since we use bait and chum, we attract the shark to the boat, try to get it like as close to the boat as possible, and measure it like an estimation with size. And what was there
No,
was
that was it.
something
So
else.
it was about confirming the data because it was not.
Yeah,
like
and then
citizen
we
science.
have photos and videos of every interaction. So we're now doing trying to do a photo ID catalog with makos. We're trying to see which characteristics are useful for identifying individuals and see if we have returning individuals with each year.
Great, thanks.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. And now the last presentation before the coffee break. Andre Steckenreuter from Germany. Emerging technologies in acoustic telemetry, real-time versus data storage. Please.
Hi everyone, and thanks for holding out before the first coffee break of the day. I know that's a bit difficult, but bear with me. So I'm not presenting any research results here. This is about new technologies that are emerging in acoustic telemetry, and these might be a nice set of tools for you to utilize in the future if you like. So here I'm concentrating on real-time data and acoustic data storage. Just a very brief evolution of acoustic telemetry. So it has been a well-established tool for many years, almost 3 decades now, and it provides information on spatio-temporal movements and associated behavior of aquatic species. And on the diagram on the left here, you can see on the bottom left, it has all started with early manual tracking receivers, very bulky equipment. And over time, with miniaturization of equipment, especially batteries as well, and their lifetime, it has evolved to very sophisticated technology. So new technologies are evolving all the time, obviously, with research needs and so on, to allow for new and innovative research questions to be answered and applications in the field. So now, these days, we can track a wide variety of aquatic animals from very small animals like juvenile sea turtles, for example, or salmon smolt, or very small species as such. We can monitor animals over small and large distances along whole coastlines if you want to, or in small bays if you want to do some more finer scale positioning of your species and associated behavior. And you can also have a look at species interaction if you tag different species at the same time in the same environment. You can use cables, but you can also use real-time monitoring, and I will get to that in a little bit. So today, as I said, I want to talk about two examples, and that's real-time data, so you can basically track any fish anytime, anywhere, but any fish is not really right. It should be any aquatic species, really, and as real-time. And on the right-hand side, you can see the example of data storage. To come to the first example, real-time data, these systems usually consist of various components. So that's a mooring with a surface hub and a receiver. We have acoustically tagged animals, and that is all stored in a cloud-centric database. But these can be accompanied with aqua measures, environmental monitoring sensors as well, to get another layer of depth or complexity in your study. So this is a typical setup or diagram of how a setup could look in real life. So if an animal is tagged and it is in the vicinity of receivers, acoustic receivers, that you will be notified with that mooring that is relaying the data via the mobile net or satellites to your office. If you want to add this another layer of complexity, so environmental data to it, you can use these aqua measure sensors, and they can be in the vicinity of receivers, so they can communicate with the hydrophone with the receivers as well, and relay the same information via the mobile net or satellite system. So these sensors are environmental aqua measure sensors. You can measure DO, salinity, but also use other pods that can measure green algae, chlorophyll, oil, turbidity, etc. And these devices can be downloaded with a mobile app, and you can export CSVs or manage it in a cloud-centric database. And then on your mobile app, it will look something like that. So these sensors always have temperature and tilt included, plus the sensor of your choice. And in this example, that's DO. So that's what it looks like when you recover your data. Very nice and easy. Or you can choose to download via your receiver, because, as I said, they're communicating with hydrophones with each other, and that data is stored there, and then you can download it in a different way. So there's two ways. So you can not only have real-time notifications when your animals are near these receivers, but you can also have the environmental monitoring data as another layer. And if you want to plot that onto a diagram of an artificial setup of an installation of receivers, you've got your fish that are tagged, you've got receivers, you've got a surface hub with your real-time data and the relay of data to the mobile or satellite net, and then you can overlay this with, for example, DO data that gives you this another depth of complexity for your research questions. The real-time data can be accessed as well, like your surface hubs can be accessed, so that's through a software that's called Fathom Live, and you get an account, you set up its a username and so on, and then you can log into it, and you know where it is. It shows up on a map, and you can investigate several different parameters and see how your system is performing as well at the same time while it's out there. One example, this is a slightly older unit, not the newest one that is just emerged. So that's real-time fish tracking on the eastern seaboard of Australia in New South Wales. And there, researchers have collaborated with fisheries, so a governmental organization. They have tagged more than 600 sharks at the moment, with targeting 3 species: white shark, bull shark, and tiger shark. And they've done that because in recent years there have been more and more shark attacks along those coastlines, with lots of surfers and bathers in the water. So they needed some kind of reaction from the government, so program into place. So the reason they've got a whole different line of these receivers along this large stretch of coastline. And when one of these tagged sharks is in the vicinity of a receiver, then within 60 seconds of detection, there will be an alert in an app called SharkSmart. And that's then a result of those detections can be beach closures for a certain time for public safety reasons. So the second example that I want to get into today, and it's data storage tags, acoustic data storage tags. They operate like normal coded sensor transmitters. So coded transmitters are tags or transmitters that have a unique ID, so you know which kind of individual you have tagged. And but they include also memory to store the sensor readings that I mentioned. And to offload all the sensor data, you have to recover those units. Sensors sampling rates can be different from the transmit rate of the ID, so you can program them to your needs, and you can log about 500,000 sensor samples if you've got one sensor, or half of that if you've got 2 sensors, for example, and temperature and depth histories. Available in different sizes and in floating versions as well. So the important bit in these acoustic data storage tags is that you've got 2 technologies in one. So one is the acoustic data, like our normal acoustic tags, and you've got archival data. And if you put these technologies together, you can investigate long-term movement behavior, even if your animals are leaving your acoustic installations and your array. So you can then ground truth your archival data models with your acoustic data, and you can then geolocate, or at least try to get some kind of location of your animals when they're outside of your acoustic installations. And I just chose this example for rays in the North Sea for geolocation. But I see we're running out of time, and so if you've got any questions, let me know. Otherwise, we will be here out in the table where we've got some exhibition of our new technologies, and you can have a chat with us, and we'll be here tomorrow as well, so come and have a chat.
Okay, thank you, Anne. Questions or comments? One there.
Andre, what type of geolocation model is Vemco running on their tag?
Well, as it is very new technology, the geolocation that I mentioned is mainly done with the DST component, but it's certainly possible with ADSTs as well. If you've got the temperature and depth histories, you can, depending on your environment, you might have a very sophisticated model where you can pinpoint when your animal has been when it's outside your acoustic installation, or depending on the species and the environment, that might be an area. When you're interested in how far did it go down the coast, that might be a possibility, or how far did it venture into deeper waters, that might be a potential. So yeah.
So it's not a light-based geolocation?
No, it's not. No. Thanks, Barbara.
Other questions?
Hello. So it seems that the second one you presented is kind of similar to some of the satellite tagging. So how is it maybe better? Or if I want to choose between this super expensive satellite that gives similar information to the second one, why would I choose this one? How is it better or different?
Well, you're right. Satellite tags are very expensive, and ADS-T tags are a fraction of that. So it's definitely cheaper. You can tag more animals, and if you recover your units, your tags or transmitters with the help of fisheries, for example, or industry, then you get a lot of data out of that without spending too much money on satellite tags. It's definitely an alternative. Yeah.
Basically, the better thing is the price, not so much the technology or the information.
Well, it's a
you get out of
completely
it.
different technology. Satellite tags were completely different than acoustic tags, and these sensor data that you get with it, the depth histories and the temperature histories, you can generate models and see where your animal has been when it's outside the acoustic installations. So it's, but we can have a chat after and you can have a look at it.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any others?
No more questions? Okay. Just two announcements from Emilio, and then the coffee break. We are perfectly on time, thanks to all the speakers for respecting the time.
Well, I have two problems to solve with your help, and one good news. What you prefer to know before? Well, I ask if someone of you has a Renault Kadjar FX615G and Z. Please to move the car after the coffee break, just to let the coffee break team to go away. Then you can put again the car inside. And my students are very happy to announce that at the registration desk we have a collecting box for your items for the auction of tonight, but they are also sad because it's still empty, so please help us to fill the box so we can take the items for the social dinner for tonight. And the good news is that since we have an anticipation of a presentation and a delegate that tomorrow will not attend, if you all agree, we can start tomorrow morning at 9 and not 8:30, so we will have more rest after the social dinner. Are you agree? Okay, perfect. And now take your coffee.
25 minutes, no more, please.